All right, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Happy Monday to you. I hope you're doing well. Excited for today's conversation on HR Tech Talks. I am Ben Eubanks, your host. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. If you've been around before, you're joining again. Glad to have you back. Today's conversation is going to be with Jordan Eakers. He's the Chief Customer Officer and a co-founder over at Nudge Rewards. We're going to talk about the performance of our people. We're going to talk about that in some tangible ways. And sometimes it's easy to get this abstract conversation around how performance happens and things like that. And so we're going to talk about communication, performance, innovation, all those kind of things in the discussion. So I'll go ahead and bring Jordan in to the conversation. Welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you so much, Ben. Pleasure to be here with you.
I'm glad to have you. So just to get us kind of kicked off, tell us a little about Jordan, what you do, and who you are.
Awesome. So Jordan Eakers, I am one of the co-founders of an organization called Nudge. And a little bit of background on myself, pretty much spent my entire career working in the world of retail, from working on the front line to being in the operating seat of one of the largest coalition loyalty programs in Canada. And so spent a fair amount of time working with some of the world's most admired brands, trying to figure out how do we deliver an exceptional customer experience in store. And that is really the genesis behind Nudge, which was how can we change the way that the world's most admired brands support their front line to improve their performance and drive same-store sales. So that's a little bit about us.
Awesome. And when Jordan is not thinking about sales and driving value, what do you like to do?
What do I like to do? What do I like to do in a COVID world? So I was just kind of sharing with Ben beforehand. I decided to actually drive across the country in Canada, and I'm currently enjoying my free time that I have exploring the mountains in beautiful British Columbia. So big fan of the outdoors, the blue skies, hiking up mountains, and trying to make the most of the time that we have, especially in this pretty peculiar year that we're all living through.
Sounds like a good plan. Someone asked me the other day, like, what's this year been like for you? I'm like, it's hard to even encapsulate that in words, but there are some things that I appreciate, family time and being able to focus on some things that I normally wouldn't in a normal world, and other things I'm like, man, I really miss going to an event and spending time with people and seeing them in person. So it's been kind of an interesting trade-off of things, and who knows what it's going to be like going forward, but I'm glad you're capitalizing on that, spending some time outdoors. That's one of my favorite things to do as well. And our kids are all, let's go outside every chance they get. I'm like, thank goodness for that. So
fun stuff. Good way to tire them out a little bit.
Hey, don't tell anybody. That's our secret. It's like, hey, we're going to get a nap today. Okay, let's go outside. Let's do this, do that. Try to keep them as occupied as we can. My son's like, can I go in the woods? I'm like, no, it's still snake season here, still poison ivy season here. So once things die off, we can go out there. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think back now, and I didn't realize how much I appreciated that as a kid. And now they get a chance to enjoy those things too. So it's a ton of fun and making memories. So let's talk about what Nudge does, because you gave us that little bit of a preview earlier. There's this idea of a nudge in, I guess, psychology, and that's the first thing I thought of. I don't know if that's a direction that you were thinking of when you and the team started Nudge, but I'd love for you to talk about the idea behind Nudge and some of how you work practically, because we're going to dig into pieces again like communication, innovation, things like that in the conversation today. But I'd like for you to lay out, if you don't mind, a little bit of the practical ways Nudge actually supports clients.
Totally. So to pick up on a little bit of the talk track you went there, I think at the end of the day, brands that want to drive better outcomes on the front line require the ability to be able to influence the behaviors of their frontline associates, to be able to drive same-store sales, deliver a better customer experience, or improve the retention of their staff. So the end mecca here is how can we create a culture whereby we're driving top performing teams every single day and delivering a great customer experience. If I pair that back, when I was in the operating seat and we were designing what we believe to be compelling marketing initiatives to drive consumers to go in store to purchase a particular product, one of the biggest challenges we faced every single day was how can we actually communicate this product knowledge information to our frontline associates so that when Ben, the customer, walks through the front door, I, Jordan, the employee, have the information that I need to be able to properly deliver a great experience with you, and upsell you on that particular product. And so we kind of had this aha moment where we recognize that frontline associates are the individuals that bring the brand experience to life every single day. The way in which we communicate and support frontline associates is fundamentally broken because we're delivering emails to that really busy store manager and expecting every store manager to consistently deliver that information to their team members. And part of the reality is that just wasn't really happening consistently or effectively across our operations. So what we've built at Nudge is an application that frontline associates download on their own device. And it provides a brand the ability to be able to deliver information to the right individual at the right time to educate them on anything that you might want them to execute on, which is effectively influencing their behavior to drive better brand outcomes.
There's so many things I want to tie into there that you said. So let's talk about the communications aspect of it. You know, you said email. We dumped more email on someone who's already not able to respond to it because they've got all these other things that they're working on. Essentially, it sounds like a big part of what Nudge does is helps to build that communication layer so that people are aware of what's a priority, not just, I'll say this, email doesn't have any sense of priority, right? It's just it's just volume. And so Nudge can help to share those things that are high priority, help you figure out what you should be doing, help you decide which activities are worth your time and which ones maybe can wait a little while. How does Nudge differ from some of the other things in the market right now? Because everybody, when you say communication apps, communication tools, people are thinking, okay, like Slack and Teams, and those have gotten a lot of hype this year, especially because of the COVID world, people looking for a way to communicate virtually, but Nudge is not quite the same, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. So everything that we've built into Nudge has always been designed with how do we provide the most amount of utility to frontline managers and frontline associates to help them do their job more effectively every single day. So when we look at the Slack or the Microsoft Teams of the world, most of those solutions have been primarily designed for the desk worker. And a big part of our thesis was 80% of the world's workforce is considered to be non-desk. Only about a percentage point of VC capital is deployed towards solutions to better empower the non-desk worker. And so we kind of saw two really interesting trends where it's frontline associates are so fundamentally important to deliver a great customer experience. The way in which we're supporting them from a communication perspective is completely broken. And all the venture capital money in the space was going to a very different worker segment. So we saw that there was a huge opportunity to change the way that brands communicate with their frontline. And I think for us, one of the biggest differentiations, you've kind of characterized our ability to be able to communicate from the top down to frontline associates. But for us, a big thesis was there are so many brilliant ideas that live on the front line. And if brands can find ways to actually source best practices and ideas from the front line and establish that two-way communication channel, they can become a lot smarter about what's actually working. So we built in a whole kind of feature set that's designed to say, hey, Ben, you're the top salesperson at this location. What is it that you do? And so brands can now kind of extract all that wisdom you have so they can make better decisions around what they need to communicate out by co-creating those solutions with their people, not just within the four walls of headquarters.
I love the co-creation idea. So there's a book that I read years ago called The Idea-Driven Organization. And that's the premise of the book is we always think that innovation comes from distant to remote office, the executive office where someone's just sitting there thinking all day and they come up with a brilliant idea that solves all the problems. And when the researchers started looking at the actual data, they said, a lot of the ideas that come that lead to innovations for products, for services, things like that actually come from the people that are closest to the work getting done, the people who are on the assembly line, who are delivering service to a customer in a retail context. Those people who are actually doing the work, they see where they can improve, where those innovations can happen. But in a lot of companies, they don't have a chance to surface those in a way that allows the company to take action on them. It's usually like, well, here's a good idea. And eventually that person leaves because that idea is never implemented. And you missed a chance to capitalize on that and share it across all your teams as well.
Yeah, like you touched on so many things there. So in the way the communication cascade from the top to bottom is broken, the same truth stands from sourcing best practices back up to headquarters. So I think historically, most brands that are operating in food service, retail, hospitality, or any non-desk workforce, these ideas live there. The reality is they're traditionally just communicated to a manager, and then you hope that that manager passes that information back up that chain of command to the front line. And the reality is that doesn't happen effectively, and it also typically carries a bias. So for us, our whole theory was, if we can find a way to just capture those ideas in a convenient manner through an application, it's not only going to provide operational intelligence to that brand to say, this is the best way to improve this part of the customer experience, but it's also going to better engage your frontline associates. Because if you look at the research over the last 20 years of the drivers of employee satisfaction, the ability to be able to share feedback and have that feedback actioned on is one of the biggest drivers of employee sat. So we wanted to build that kind of utility into the solution to make sure that brands are not only capturing these great ideas from the front line, but also recognizing their employees for sharing that feedback, because we know that builds a culture of performance. And the one last comment contextually is, if you think about how COVID has impacted the reopening, brands that are learning what's working and what's not working as they reopen safely, you have to be listening to your front line, because they're the ones that are delivering on that every single day.
Yes, absolutely. Well, in general, that makes sense to listen, but even more so when things are moving rapidly. I told someone a couple months ago, I feel like the truth is changing, not just week from day to day, depending on what's happening. And the world is moving so quickly that you can't have that lag between, okay, let me go and check with my manager or share that idea with them, and let's see if they can, again, put that back up and, as you said, kind of cascade that back down in the appropriate channels. That takes too long. It's not efficient. And by the time that information gets back down to the other people, the truth may have changed. And so it doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't lead to any positive outcomes there.
Yeah, I think we're moving to a world where we need to be a lot more agile with how we adapt to change. And if you think about how much change has happened in such a short period of time, you've now had new standard operating practices being rolled out. You've had a reduced labor model. You've had safety and operating procedures that are being rolled out. You have this rush towards digital engagement, e-commerce jumping by over 20% of retail sales. A lot of those points of interaction still happen in store, like buy online, pick up curbside. You now need to train your entire workforce on how to execute against that. So we try to capture all that in a statement at Nudge to call it's like everyone is having a new day one. Employees are needing to be retrained on the new customer experience, and customers, frankly, are needing to be retrained on how to engage with a brand. Like when the first time you went to a retail location, like it was a little bit kind of like, I don't know, I was insecure because I didn't really know how to interact in this new store format. So it's so important. Communication is like the foundational driver of both of those pieces.
Yes. It plays such a huge role, and sometimes it's easy to forget that part of it. One of the things you touched on earlier was the managers as part of this bigger puzzle, right? Because it's easy for someone like me who talks about talent, who cares about HR, who cares about that side of the business, to always see things as, okay, we've got to do stuff, and then the employees are the recipients of the beneficiaries. But managers play this critical role in, especially in some of the different verticals you've talked about, the different industries, right? Retail, things like that, where the manager is a key linchpin in how communications happen, but also how operations get done on a day-to-day basis. Talk about them as part of this process. How do you support them? How do you make sure they have what they need so they're able to support? Because they are often expected to do 100 different things every day. And yeah, I made the joke. You made the joke earlier, Mike, about the email thing. And I said that's really hard to prioritize because that doesn't give you any sense of it. But talk about how you support managers in this bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of answer the question through two different kind of use case and stories. So first and foremost, like across the industry, we know that labor models have changed. In order for brands to work towards kind of profitable retail, food service, hospitality operation models, we need to make sure that we have the right labor relative to the sales per location. And if I look at kind of a manager value proposition, imagine you're a manager showing up to work, and one of the first things that you need to do traditionally is to sort through a whole bunch of information that was provided to you, put your own self-bias on how you're going to prioritize, and then through a daily huddle, communicate all that information to the team, and now cross your fingers that the team now both is bought in on the plan, but also understands what they need to execute on. So imagine a world with Nudge where when you're holding that morning briefing or your pre-service meeting, everyone in that meeting's actually already consumed all the daily priorities because we've been able to nudge them directly to say, hey, Ben, here's what you need to focus on today and tomorrow to drive our business forward. So we transition that daily briefing from a briefing meeting to an actual constructive conversation around what we need to accomplish on that given day by ensuring that the team is actually equipped with the information themselves versus relying just on the manager to communicate it to them. So kind of removing a little bit of that burden from the manager. And the second piece that we've built in is insights to a manager. So I can now tell you, if you're a manager of a location, who on your team is engaged and disengaged, which we know is a leading indicator of their likelihood to stay with the business. I can tell you exactly how knowledgeable your team is on the new safety protocols that have just been rolled out. So you know that Jordan needs a little bit more coaching on this particular topic. So we've tried to build in these really powerful insights that help managers become better leaders by coaching them on kind of the focus areas that they need to work on for their unique team based on the insights that we capture.
Interesting. And not just their, tell me if I'm wrong here, not just their team, but by individual. Does it tell the manager that, hey, Ben and Jordan are on your team and Ben's locked up, he's squared away, but Jordan, he's still got some issues with that. So does it tell them that granularly how far down they have to actually prioritize what to do next?
Yeah, exactly. So a big part of kind of the secret sauce behind Nudge is all the data and insights that we capture and produce. So yes, we've created this extremely engaging communication vehicle that people want to use every single day, but we're capturing information and insights such as how knowledgeable has Ben, how confident has Ben in this new protocol, and we can surface those insights to managers so that they can now better coach their team. So a big part of kind of our vision was how can we actually start to surface what we call a behavioral data set that helps brands just become smarter about how they optimize their people by understanding their strengths and opportunities for improvement.
Very interesting. One of the other things you said, the piece you mentioned a minute ago about the team meeting piece of that, I don't know if you know it, but there's actually this learning concept that's been pretty hot in the last couple of years called flipped classroom. And for a long time, it was, okay, you show up in class, you get the lecture, and then we'll do some discussion at the end if there's any time left for that. But most of it's just a one-way information dump, like at most manager meetings. And they've had this change to a flipped classroom model where instead of that, you view the lecture content, you view the video in advance of the class, you show up, and it's very much focused on the conversational, the Q&A, the discussion of how do we take that and apply it. So it's not just this theory when you show up, but it's actual practical insights. And it sounds like that the same way that you're enabling managers to now run their meetings is people have the information before they show up. And now it's about, okay, let's just do the fine tuning. Let's think through this. And that can also be more inclusive for people that, like me, they tend to, I need to ponder this a little while. I need to think about this and figure out what questions I have, formulates, an opinion of this, and then think through how I'm going to apply that. It allows them to think through those things before they show up. So they're able to really get what they need and then actually go and perform. That's a really interesting approach.
Yeah, it becomes such a more constructive way of solutioning and setting daily action items. And the reality is, like, if you're sitting in an operating seat at the four walls of headquarters, there's so much variability in the delivery of that information from a manager to team members that quite often you're crossing your fingers and you're hoping that 100% of your managers deliver all information 100% the way you wanted it to. And the reality is that doesn't happen.
No, so, surely not. Surely not. Come on now.
So we're all perfect. At least we aspire to be great leaders. We aspire to deliver a great customer experience. And I think, frankly, if I come back to some of the employee engagement research that we've done, like, we know that communication is also one of the biggest drivers of their satisfaction. And so being able to allow managers to have much more constructive discussions to solution in the moment versus just download information is a huge piece of it. And also, like, very tactically from a product perspective, if Ben doesn't show up for that daily briefing, Jordan, the manager, can still actually send Ben a direct message to say, here's the daily plan. And I can understand whether or not you've actually consumed and understood it. So we try to like augment a process that's already existed for quite some time, but flip the script and have it be a lot more constructive than just an information download, as you mentioned.
So one of the you mentioned this earlier about you can see kind of the knowledge awareness or knowledge level of your team. You just said that again, poking fun at me about me missing the meeting and making sure I'm up to speed and I know what I need to know. How does that part of that work, where you actually can get a sense for how much Ben knows about the priorities or about the new agenda for the team? How do you get that sense of that piece of it? Because that's really interesting.
Yeah. So the way Nudge is structured is it's obviously an application for frontline associates and managers. And then there's a campaign builder and analytics engine, which headquarters manages. So say we are rolling out a new safety protocol, which is what's the new customer journey look like in a COVID world? I can deliver information to you based on whenever you interact with a Nudge, you earn points. So we've gamified the system of communicating with the frontline. What we're really doing there is we're gathering all this information around whether Ben has read this information, and then I can follow up the next day and quiz you to see whether or not you understand it. And what we then do is we can actually look at the correlation between how knowledgeable an individual is and how well they achieve that specific outcome, whether it is product sales. So if I'm an operator and I have 1,000 locations or 1,000 people, and I can tell you these 30% of our locations do not understand this current program in market, I can now intervene and course correct their behaviors to optimize driving sales versus just crossing my fingers and hoping that they're going to execute in the way that we want them to.
That sounds powerful, to be able to juxtapose these kinds of things, your general awareness, your knowledge of these critical things, whether you've even interacted with a campaign about, hey, here's the new tactic that works for our upselling that's proven effective in these other regions. The people that are not consuming that, you can look at their actual sale data, the revenue data, and compare those two things and say, look, this is having an impact, or it's not, or you can experiment kind of live with those things. That's incredible.
We can kind of help. The way that we think about it is we're helping the industry become much less reactive and much more prescriptive. So if I can now tell you that these 40% of locations do not have a high level of confidence of this program that's in market, we know that there's a direct correlation between confidence and sales, as an example. Operators can now course correct, intervene, re-educate that percentage of the population to improve their knowledge in a way that they can become a lot more kind of proactive about addressing those knowledge gaps before it's too late, versus just measuring how well we did after the fact. We can actually give them a leading indicator that can change the way that they manage their people.
Can one worker interact with another worker using this platform?
Yeah. So there's the ability. So we have very basic features like chat, where you and I can interact with each other. We have forums where we connect top performing managers to share their best practices, so we can kind of connect what's working at different locations, so they're constantly solutioning kind of the same problems that they're all managing and sharing those best practices. So a comment you made to me earlier, which was around the whole decentralization of management, we're putting the tool set in the hands of the people that bring your brand to life, but we're doing it in a way that allows them to work together towards a common goal, not just relying on the marching orders from headquarters down.
One of the things that occurs to me as you're talking through this is I see so many conversations about performance management, for example, in our space broadly, right, the HR space. We're talking about how to manage performance, how to track performance, things like that. And what I love is our research actually shows that just trying to look at what happened in the past is not going to lead to better outcomes in the future. It's about how do we enable people to actually perform? How do we give them the right tools, give them the right information, and enable their managers, equip them so that they can lead and drive the performance of their teams? And that's what I love about this conversation, is that's what I'm hearing here. It's not just about let's look and see what you did in the past, so let's focus on that. It's you said it a second ago, I guess, right? It's about helping you be prescriptive, helping you be proactive and figure out what to do next, the next best step to take, so you can lead to the right kind of outcomes you're shooting for.
Yeah, totally. And I'd say that being a communication solution provides us the ability to capture the insights that are required to be able to allow brands to be a lot more agile with their operations. It's a fine balance of building utility that frontline associates want and love, while also doing it in a way that meets the needs of the organization as well. And so for us, when we recognize that this communication cascade is fundamentally broken, both top down and bottom up, that became our vehicle to be able to reach those frontline associates in a way that we can now capture these rich insights that allow brands to be a lot more agile with how they start to course correct their operations. So comms is the foundational element of it all, but it produces all of this rich utility that we can then build on.
This has been so much fun, Jordan. If someone's listening to this and they're curious whether they're in that space, they have a lot of, again, non-desk workers that are working for them, or they're just curious about what Nudge is up to and want to learn more about you and the team and how you're serving companies like this every day. Actually, on the website, there's some really cool customer stories and things. I always love a good story, some case studies and things. You want to check those out. But how can someone reach out or learn more?
Yeah, so website is www.nudgerewards.com. And so you can find more information there and get in touch. And some of the lovely human beings behind our brand would be more than happy to share a conversation and also learn more about what you guys are going through. Because I think for us, we built our solution together with the brands that we're fortunate enough to work with. And so we very much so take a partnership perspective. And so we'd love to share a conversation if anyone would like to dive in more.
Wonderful. Awesome. Jordan, this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed this. I think I told you this before we started recording even. I love the idea of really enabling people right now, especially people who are having to do the work every day, people who are delivering service in a variety of spaces, giving them the tools they need to really perform. And this has been so much fun to dive into how Nudge is helping to do that. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And we appreciate joining and really enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. Wonderful. To everybody else, thank you for hanging out with us for HR Tech Talks today. I'm Ben Eubanks, and we will catch you next